in the vast territories known as the Pridelands, where golden grasslands stretch beneath an endless sky and ancient traditions bind every soul to their destined path. There lived a young woman who refused her fate. Her name was Sera, and she was born into the Lumina bloodline, a family chosen for generations to serve as living lanterns, vessels who absorbed sunlight during the day and radiated it at night, providing light for ceremonies and sacred spaces. It was an honor, they told her, a blessing, a purpose given by the sun itself. But to Sera it felt like a cage made of expectations and obligations, a life chosen for her before she drew her first breath. So she did the unthinkable. She fled. She ran into the deep desert where the Pridelands authority could not reach, where tradition held no power, where she could be anything except what her bloodline demanded. She thought she would find freedom in anonymity, peace in being ordinary. But the light within her could not be hidden forever, and the guardian sent to find her would discover that sometimes the greatest treasures are those we try to throw away. This is the story of Sera, who ran from her glow, and Ashar, the land guardian who taught her that destiny is not a cage, but a choice we make every day to become who we truly are. The Pridelands are not a single city or kingdom, but a confederation of communities spread across the fertile grasslands that border the great desert. Here the earth is rich enough to support agriculture. The rains come with some regularity, and life is governed by ancient traditions passed down through countless generations. Every person born in the Pridelands is expected to fulfill the role their bloodline has always fulfilled. Farmers farm, warriors protect, healers heal, and the Lumina shine. There is no room for deviation, no acceptance of those who wish to choose their own path. The system works because everyone accepts their place, finds meaning in their predetermined purpose. Those who question are gently but firmly reminded of their obligations. Those who resist are ostracized, cast out, made examples of what happens when individual desire challenges communal harmony. Sera grew up in the capital settlement of Sundara, a beautiful place of sandstone buildings with gardens that bloomed year-round, maintained by families who had been gardeners for centuries. Her own family, the Luminas, lived in a compound near the central temple, a sacred space where ceremonies honoring the sun took place daily. From the age of 5, Sera was trained in the absorption techniques, taught to sit in sunlight for hours, meditating, pulling the light into her body, storing it in some place beyond physical organs, in her spirit itself. By the time she was 10, she could hold enough light to illuminate an entire room for hours after sunset. By 15, she could release the light in patterns, create shapes and colors, perform beautiful displays during ceremonies that left audiences weeping with the beauty of it. She was exceptionally talented, her instructors said. She would be one of the greatest Luminas in generations. She would bring honor to her family, serve the Pridelands with distinction. She should be proud, but Sera was not proud. She was suffocating. Every day was the same. Wake before dawn, sit in the first light, absorb for hours, attend lessons on control and release, perform in evening ceremonies, sleep, repeat. She had no time for friends, no opportunity to explore other interests, no choice in how she spent her days. Her life was mapped out completely. She would serve as a Lumina until she was too old to hold light effectively. Then she would train the next generation. Then she would die, having never done anything except shine on command. The thought filled her with a desperation so intense it felt like drowning on dry land. She tried to express her feelings to her parents, to her instructors, to anyone who might listen. They smiled indulgently and told her she was going through a phase, that all young Luminas felt restless before they fully accepted their purpose. They assured her the feeling would pass. It did not pass. It grew stronger, more urgent, more unbearable with each day. On the eve of her 18th birthday, the day she was supposed to undergo the ceremony of eternal light, a ritual that would permanently enhance her abilities while also binding her irrevocably to her role as a Lumina, Sera made her choice. She would not go through with the ceremony. She would not spend the rest of her life as a living lamp. She would run. She spent weeks preparing in secret, hiding supplies, studying maps, learning about the lands beyond the Pridelands, where traditions were less rigid, where people could choose their own paths. She learned about the merchant cities of the deep desert, places like Solhaven and Kemara, where anyone with skills could make a living, where bloodlines mattered less than capability and determination. That was where she would go. She would become a merchant or a guide or anything except a Lumina. On the night before her ceremony, Sera gathered her hidden supplies, wrote a letter to her parents explaining her decision and apologizing for the shame she would bring them, and she walked out of Sundra under cover of darkness. She did not look back. She knew if she did, guilt might stop her, might drag her back to the life she could not endure. So she kept her eyes forward and walked into the desert, into the unknown, into freedom or death, whichever came first. The desert was far harsher than she anticipated. Sera had grown up in the sheltered comfort of the Pridelands, where water was plentiful and food abundant. Out here, survival was a constant struggle. She rationed her water carefully, followed her maps as best she could, walked during the cool hours and rested during the brutal heat. Days blurred together, each one a test of her determination. Twice she nearly turned back, fear and exhaustion almost overwhelming her resolve. But each time she thought about the ceremony she had fled, about the life of service and obligation stretching endlessly forward, and she found the strength to continue. 2 weeks into her journey, desperately low on water and beginning to hallucinate from heat and dehydration, Sera stumbled into a small oasis. It was barely more than a pool surrounded by struggling palms, but it was life. She drank deeply, filled her water skins, rested in the meager shade. As she recovered, she became aware of a presence. Someone was watching her. She turned to find a man standing at the edge of the oasis, tall and powerfully built, perhaps 30 years old, with bronze skin and eyes the color of molten gold. He wore the garments of a desert traveler, practical and worn, but there was something about him that suggested authority, power held in check. And on his chest, visible through the open collar of his shirt, was a mark that made Sera's breath catch. A lion, rendered in golden lines that seemed to shimmer with inner light. A totem mark. This man was one of the chosen, marked by the Solar Lion itself. The man studied her with those unsettling golden eyes, then spoke, his voice deep and measured. "You are far from the Pridelands, Lumina. Very far from where you should be." Sera's first instinct was to deny everything, but she was too exhausted for deception. "How do you know what I am?" "You glow even now, faintly around the edges, as if light is trying to escape your skin. I have seen it before, and I know the Pridelands sent word to all the surrounding territories asking for help locating a runaway from the Lumina bloodline. A young woman, 18 years old, who fled on the eve of her binding ceremony. That description matches you perfectly. Sera felt her heart sink. They sent hunters after me. They sent me. I am Ashar, Lion Guardian of the Eastern Territories. I track those who are lost, return those who have fled, protect those who need protecting. The Pridelands requested my assistance in finding you. They are worried about your safety, they said. They fear you will die out here alone. Are they wrong to fear that? Sera wanted to lie, to claim she was fine, perfectly capable of surviving. But her depleted water skins, her sunburned skin, her obvious exhaustion told a different story. Perhaps they are not wrong, but I would rather risk death than return to the life they chose for me. That was not a life. It was a slow extinction of everything that makes me who I am. Ashar was quiet for a long moment, his golden eyes unreadable. Then he moved to the opposite side of the oasis pool, deliberately keeping distance between them, and sat down. He pulled out his own water and food, began to eat with measured calm. He did not approach her, did not threaten her, did not demand she return immediately. Finally he spoke again. I am going to rest here for a few hours, wait for the heat to pass. You should rest as well. Regain your strength. When evening comes, we will talk about what happens next. That is all. Just talk. Sera did not trust him, but she also recognized that if he wanted to force her return, he could. He was larger, stronger, and marked by a totem, which meant he possessed abilities far beyond normal humans. If he was offering her time to rest and a conversation rather than immediate capture, she should accept. She settled into the shade on her side of the pool, watching him warily, but exhaustion eventually overcame suspicion, and she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. When she woke, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson. Ashar sat where she had last seen him, calmly maintaining a small fire, heating water for tea. He looked up as she stirred. You slept 4 hours. You needed it. There is food if you want it. Sera accepted the offered flatbread and dried meat, eating slowly, still watching him for signs of threat. When she finished, he poured tea for both of them, the gesture strangely civilized given the circumstances. Now, Ashar said, we talk. Tell me why you ran. Not the simple answer, but the truth. What about your life as a Lumina was so unbearable that you would rather risk death in the desert than continue it? Sera set down her teacup, her hands clenching into fists. Because it was not my life. It was the life my bloodline dictated. From the moment I was born, every choice was made for me. What I would do, how I would spend my days, what my purpose would be. I was never asked what I wanted, never given the option to choose differently. I was told I was blessed, honored, chosen. But it felt like being buried alive. Every day sitting in the sun for hours, absorbing light, performing like a trained animal in ceremonies. And everyone around me was so happy about it, so proud, that I could not even express my misery without being told I was ungrateful, that I should be honored by my role. I tried to accept it. I truly tried, but I could not. I would rather be ordinary and free than special and trapped. Ashar listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. And if you could go anywhere, do anything, what would you choose? I do not know. That is the truth. I have no idea what I want to do with my life because I have never been allowed to explore possibilities. I just know I want the chance to figure it out, to try things and fail, to discover what I am good at, what brings me joy, to be more than what my bloodline says I should be. Ashar nodded slowly. That is a reasonable desire. The Pridelands system works for many people, but it is not suited for everyone. Forcing someone into a role they despise serves no one. Not them, not the community. Sera looked up sharply, surprised. You understand? I thought you would tell me I was being selfish, that my duty to my bloodline should outweigh my personal desires. Ashar's golden eyes held hers steadily. I was born in the Pridelands, too. My family were warriors, expected to serve in the defense forces for generations. I was trained from childhood to fight, to follow orders, to defend the borders without question, and I was good at it. But I felt the same suffocation you describe. I did not want to spend my life fighting other people's wars, following commands I did not always agree with. So when I was 21, I walked away, not secretly like you did, but openly. I resigned my position and left. My family was furious, my community shamed, but I could not continue. I wandered for years, trying to find my purpose, my place. And eventually the Solar Lion found me and marked me, gave me a role that I chose rather than inherited. I became a guardian, someone who protects and guides by choice rather than by birthright. So yes, Sera, I understand what you are feeling. Better than you might think? Sera felt tears prick her eyes. If you understand, then why did you accept the mission to find me? Why are you here to drag me back? Ashar leaned forward slightly, his voice gentle but firm. I accepted the mission because the Pridelands were right about one thing. You would likely die out here without help. You are not equipped for desert survival, not trained for the dangers you will face. I am here not to drag you back against your will, but to offer you a choice. You can return to the Pridelands, undergo your ceremony, fulfill the role expected of you. Or you can come with me to Solhaven, where I will help you establish yourself, find work, build a new life. I will not force you either way, but I will not abandon you to die in the desert either. You deserve a chance to choose, but you also deserve to survive long enough to enjoy that choice. Sera stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. You would help me? Even though the Pridelands hired you to bring me back, they hired me to find you and ensure your safety. I am ensuring your safety. How you choose to live your life after that is not my concern or theirs. I will report that I found you, that you are unharmed, and that you have chosen to pursue a different path. They will not be happy, but they will accept it. The Pridelands cannot force people to return once they have crossed into other territories. The Confederation's laws protect individual choice in such matters, even if the Pridelands themselves do not always honor that principle. Sera felt something unfurl in her chest, some tight knot of fear and desperation loosening for the first time since she fled. You would really do this? Help me? Ashar smiled, an expression that softened his harsh features. I would, because someone helped me once when I was lost and searching. This is how I repay that debt, by helping others find their own paths. They left the oasis together the next morning, Ashar leading the way with the confidence of someone who knew the desert intimately, who could read its moods and navigate its dangers. He taught Sera as they traveled, sharing knowledge about water conservation, about reading the signs that indicated an oasis or danger, about the creatures and plants that could help or harm. She absorbed everything eagerly, her mind hungry for information, for skills that would make her capable and independent. Over the days of travel, they talked extensively. Ashar shared stories of his time in the Pridelands, of the pressure he felt to conform, of the relief that came from finally choosing his own path. Sera told him about her training, about the beauty and the burden of holding light, about the dreams she had never been able to voice. They discovered common ground, shared experiences, a mutual understanding that created a bond deeper than simple companionship. Sera found herself trusting Ashar in ways she had not trusted anyone before, because he did not want to shape her into something she was not. He simply wanted to help her become whatever she chose to be. One evening, as they camped beneath a brilliant canopy of stars, Ashar asked her a question that had been hanging unspoken between them. The light you carry, your Lumina abilities, will you use them in your new life? Or will you suppress them, try to hide what you are? Sera had been thinking about this since she fled, turning it over in her mind constantly. I do not know. Part of me wants to never use the light again, to let it fade so I can be completely ordinary. But another part recognizes that the ability is beautiful, even if the obligation was not. Maybe the answer is not to reject the light entirely, but to use it on my own terms, when I choose for purposes I believe in, instead of performing in ceremonies I do not care about. Maybe I could use the light to help people who actually need it. Travelers lost in the dark, children afraid of the night. Myself when I need to see clearly. The power itself is not the problem. The lack of choice was the problem. Ashar nodded approvingly. That is wisdom. We are not defined by our abilities or our bloodlines, but by how we choose to use them. A warrior who fights for justice is different from a warrior who fights for conquest, even if their skills are identical. A Lumina who shines because she wants to help is different from a Lumina who shines because she must. The choice transforms the action from obligation to gift. Sera felt something shift inside her at his words, some piece of understanding clicking into place. She had been so focused on rejecting her identity as a Lumina that she had not considered the possibility of redefining it, of keeping the parts she valued while discarding the parts that suffocated her. Maybe she did not have to be either a traditional Lumina or completely ordinary. Maybe she could be something new, something she created for herself. They reached Solhaven after 10 days of travel, entering the white stone city at sunset when the towers glowed pink and gold in the dying light. The city was magnificent, larger than anything Sera had seen, filled with people from dozens of different cultures and backgrounds, a place where diversity was celebrated rather than suppressed. Ashar led her through the bustling streets to a modest inn where he clearly had a standing arrangement. He secured her a room, paid for 2 weeks in advance, and told her to rest, to recover from the journey, to begin exploring the city and considering what she wanted to do. I have business here in Solhaven for the next month, he explained. I will be available if you need guidance or assistance. But this is your journey now, Sera. I am just a resource you can call upon. Make mistakes, try things. Discover who you are when no one is telling you who to be. Over the following weeks, Sera did exactly that. She explored Solhaven from the markets to the temples, talking to people from every profession imaginable. She tried different kinds of work, assisting a merchant for a few days, helping in a healer's clinic, working in a tavern, joining a caravan as a guard trainee. Some work she enjoyed, some she hated, but all of it taught her something about herself. She discovered she had a talent for navigation, for reading maps and understanding spatial relationships. She found she enjoyed helping people but disliked routine service. She learned she was braver than she thought, more capable than she had believed. And in the evenings she would meet with Ashar, sharing her experiences, asking questions, slowly building a picture of the life she wanted to create. He never pushed her toward any particular path, never judged her choices, simply listened and offered perspective when asked. Sera found herself opening up to him in ways she had never opened up to anyone, sharing fears and hopes and dreams she had kept hidden her entire life. And Ashar, in turn, shared more of his own story about the years he wandered, about the moment the Solar Lion marked him, about the responsibilities and freedoms that came with being a guardian. 1 month after arriving in Solhaven, Sera experienced her first crisis. She was walking through the market at dusk when she saw a small child, perhaps 5 years old, wandering alone and crying. The child was clearly lost, separated from parents in the crowded evening market, frightened and disoriented. Sera approached carefully, kneeling down to the child's level. "Are you lost? Can you tell me your name?" The child, a little girl, sobbed out a name and a fragmentary description of where she had been before losing her parents. Sera looked around, seeing the massive market stretching in all directions, realizing it could take hours to find the parents, hours during which the child would be terrified and the parents frantic. And she made a choice. She reached inside herself to that place where she had been trained since childhood to hold light, and she released it. Not in the controlled patterns of ceremony, not in the rigid displays of her training, but naturally, instinctively, allowing the light to flow out of her and form a glowing sphere that hovered above their heads. The light was bright enough to be seen from a considerable distance, a beacon in the darkening market. Within minutes, adults were approaching, drawn by the unusual sight, and among them came a woman screaming the child's name. Mother and daughter reunited with tears and embraces, and the mother turned to Sera with overwhelming gratitude. Thank you. I thought I had lost her forever. How did you find her?" Sera smiled, feeling something warm and right in her chest. "I did not find her. I just helped her be found. The light made it possible." After the family left, Sera stood in the market holding her hand up, watching the faint glow that still emanated from her skin, the light that was part of her whether she accepted it or not, and she realized that Ashar had been right. The power was not the problem. The obligation was the problem. Using her light to help a terrified child felt completely different from performing in ceremonies she did not care about. This felt like a choice, like a gift freely given. This felt right. She found Ashar at their usual meeting spot, an outdoor cafe where they had developed a habit of having dinner together. Before she could speak, he smiled. "I heard about what you did in the market. People are talking about the mysterious woman who created a beacon of light to help a lost child. They are calling you the gentle Lumina." Sera laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Is that what I am now? A gentle Lumina? Better than being a traditional one. I used my light tonight, Ashar. For the first time since I fled, I chose to use it. And it felt wonderful. It felt like the light was mine rather than something that owned me. That is because it is yours. It always has been. You just needed to take possession of it rather than letting others dictate how you used it. Sera sat down across from him, her expression thoughtful. I think I know what I want to do, what I want to become. Tell me. I want to be a guide. Not just through the desert, though that too, but a guide for people who are lost in other ways. People who do not fit into their prescribed roles, who are struggling to find their paths. I want to help them navigate, to use my light to illuminate possibilities, to share what I have learned about choosing your own destiny. And I want to use my Lumina abilities not in ceremonies but in practical ways, creating light for travelers, forming beacons for the lost, illuminating dark places where people fear to go. I can be a Lumina without being what the Pridelands wanted me to be. I can redefine what it means to carry this light. Ashar's golden eyes glowed with approval and something deeper, something like pride. That is an excellent purpose, one you chose for yourself, one that serves others while honoring who you are. This is what freedom looks like, Sera. Not the absence of responsibility, but the presence of choice. You have found your path. Sera felt tears prick her eyes, but they were tears of joy, rather than frustration or fear. Thank you, Ashar, for finding me, for not dragging me back, for helping me discover that running away was not about rejecting everything, but about claiming the right to choose what I keep and what I discard. You gave me the space to figure that out. I will never forget that. Ashar reached across the table and took her hand briefly, a gesture of connection and support. You did the hard work, Sera. I just walked beside you while you figured things out. That is what guardians do. We do not fix people or tell them who to be. We just stand with them while they discover it for themselves. They sat together as night fell completely over Solhaven, the city coming alive with lamps and music and the sounds of 100,000 lives being lived. And Sera felt for the first time in her existence that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, not because anyone told her so, but because she chose it. Because this life, this purpose, this identity was hers and hers alone. Over the following months, Sera established herself in Solhaven as exactly what she had envisioned, a guide and helper for those who were lost, physically or metaphorically. She worked with caravans, offering her navigational skills and her light for nighttime travel. She volunteered at shelters for refugees and displaced people, creating light in dark spaces, offering comfort and illumination to those who had lost everything. And she began gathering others like herself, people who had fled their prescribed roles in the Pridelands, who were struggling to build new identities in a world that did not understand them. She formed a small community, a support network where former tradition-bound people could share their experiences, help each other navigate freedom, learn to make choices after lifetimes of having choices made for them. Ashar watched her work with quiet satisfaction, seeing her blossom into someone confident and capable, someone who had transformed pain into purpose. He continued his own work as a guardian, but he found himself staying in Solhaven longer than he normally would, drawn by Sera's presence, by the community she was building, by the sense that something important was happening here. 3 months after they first arrived in Solhaven together, Sera approached him with a proposal. I want to expand what I am doing. I want to travel back to the borders of the Pridelands establish way stations where people who are fleeing can find shelter and support, places where they can rest, get supplies, receive guidance before continuing into the wider world. But I cannot do it alone. I need someone who knows the territories, who can protect travelers, who can negotiate with authorities. I need a guardian. Will you partner with me? Ashar was quiet for a long moment, considering the request and all its implications. Partnership meant commitment, meant tying his work to hers, meant choosing to focus his efforts on this particular cause rather than remaining a wandering guardian available to all. It meant something more personal, too, an acknowledgement that their connection over these months had become significant, important, foundational to both their lives. Finally, he nodded. I will partner with you. The work you are doing matters, and I believe in it. But more than that, I believe in you. You have become someone extraordinary, Sera, not because of your light, though that is beautiful, but because of your courage, your compassion, your refusal to let others define your worth or your purpose. Working with you would be an honor. Sera felt warmth bloom in her chest, and before she could think too carefully about it, she stepped forward and embraced him. Thank you, Ashar, for everything, for seeing me, for helping me see myself. Ashar returned the embrace, his arms strong and steady around her. You are welcome. Though I did not do much except refuse to be another person trying to trap you in a role you did not choose. The rest was all you. They separated, both slightly flushed, aware that something had shifted between them, deepened, become more than simple friendship or professional partnership. But neither spoke of it directly. There would be time for exploring what they meant to each other. For now there was work to do. They traveled together for the next year, establishing a network of way stations along the edges of the Pridelands, safe houses where those fleeing tradition could find shelter, support, and guidance. They faced opposition from Pridelands authorities, who viewed their work as encouraging desertion, as undermining the social order. But they also found allies, people within the Pridelands who recognized that forcing people into roles they despised served no one, that allowing choice and flexibility would ultimately strengthen rather than weaken their society. Slowly, attitudes began to shift. Not quickly, not dramatically, but incrementally, person by person, mind by mind. And throughout it all, Sera and Ashar worked side by side, their partnership deepening into something neither could fully articulate, but both clearly felt. They balanced each other, her light and his strength, her compassion and his pragmatism, her vision and his experience. They became known throughout the region as the Light and the Guardian, two people who had rejected their prescribed paths and forged something new, something better, something that helped countless others do the same. One evening, 2 years after Sera first fled the Pridelands, they sat together at one of their way stations, a modest building on the border that provided shelter and supplies to travelers. A family had just departed, former craftsmen from the Pridelands, who had chosen to seek opportunities in the merchant cities, and Sera had helped them plan their route, given them supplies, illuminated their path as they set out into the night. As the family's lights disappeared into the distance, Ashar spoke quietly. Do you ever regret it? Leaving the Pridelands? Giving up the security and status you had there? Sera considered the question, looking out at the vast desert stretching before them, at the sky filled with more stars than could ever be counted. Not for a moment. What I had there was not security. It was a gilded cage. This, She gestured at the way station, at the desert, at everything they had built. This is real. This is mine. This is ours. And yes, it is harder. Yes, there are days when I am exhausted and uncertain and afraid. But I am alive, Ashar, truly alive. I make choices every day, and some are wrong and some are right, but they are mine. That is worth any difficulty. Ashar turned to look at her, his golden eyes reflecting the light she always carried, the glow that never quite left her skin. You are extraordinary, Sera. When I first found you at that oasis, I saw a frightened girl running from her fate. Now I see a woman who has claimed her destiny and reshaped it into something beautiful. You inspire me. You make me want to be better, to do more, to reach higher. Sera felt her breath catch at the intensity in his gaze, at the emotion in his voice. You see me, Ashar. Really see me. Not as a Lumina or a bloodline or a role, but as Sera, as a person with flaws and strengths and dreams. Do you know how rare that is? How precious? Ashar reached out and gently touched her face, his hand warm against her cheek. I see you because you shine so brightly it would be impossible not to. And I am not speaking of your Lumina abilities. I am speaking of who you are, the light that comes from your spirit rather than your training. That light drew me to you from the first moment, and it has only grown stronger as I have watched you become yourself. Sera turned her face into his hand, closing her eyes, feeling the connection between them, like a physical presence. I was so focused on running from my fate that I did not realize I was running toward something better, toward you, toward us, toward this life we are building together. The Pridelands tried to tell me who I should be, but you helped me discover who I chose to be, and part of that choice is choosing you, choosing us. If that is what you want, too. Ashar's response was to draw her closer, to kiss her with a tenderness that spoke of months of growing feeling, of connection carefully nurtured, of love that had blossomed slowly but deeply. When they finally separated, both were glowing, Sera with her natural Lumina light that responded to strong emotion, Ashar with the golden radiance of his Solar Lion mark that pulsed in harmony with hers. We are marked by different powers, he said softly, but those powers complement each other. Your light illuminates, my strength protects. Together we are more than either of us could be alone. That is what partnership truly means. Sera smiled, feeling joy so intense it seemed to fill every corner of her being. Then let us continue building this together. This network of way stations, this community of choice, this life we are creating. Not because tradition demands it, not because bloodlines dictate it, but because we choose it. Every single day we choose it, and that choice makes all the difference. They stood together under the star-filled sky, two people who had rejected their prescribed destinies and found something infinitely better in the freedom to choose, in the courage to build rather than accept, in the love that grows when two souls recognize each other as partners rather than obligations. The Pridelands had tried to cage Sera in tradition, but she had fled, and in fleeing she had found not just freedom but purpose. Ashar had been sent to retrieve her, but instead he had helped her discover herself, and in doing so had found a partner worthy of walking beside for a lifetime. This was their story, their triumph, their proof that sometimes the greatest gifts come not from accepting what we are given, but from having the courage to claim what we choose. And as they stood together, light and strength intertwined, They knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as equals, as partners, as two people who had discovered that destiny is not something imposed from without, but something created from within through choice and courage and love. The years continued to unfold, bringing both challenges and triumphs. The network of way stations grew, expanding beyond the Pridelands' borders to serve people fleeing restrictive traditions throughout the desert territories. Sera and Ashar became legendary figures, their story told and retold, inspiring others to question the roles they had been assigned, to seek their own paths. The Pridelands themselves began to change, slowly and grudgingly at first, but eventually with genuine reform. Leaders who recognized that allowing choice strengthened rather than weakened their society rose to power, instituted changes that gave young people opportunities to explore different roles before committing permanently. The Lumina bloodline was given options. Those who wished to serve traditionally could still do so, but those who wanted to use their abilities differently were no longer forced into ceremony and obligation. Sera's own family eventually reached out to her, a tentative letter expressing pride in what she had accomplished, even if they did not fully understand it, offering reconciliation and acceptance. She visited them once, accompanied by Ashar, and the meeting was awkward but healing. They would never fully agree on whether her flight had been right or wrong, but they could acknowledge that she had built something valuable from her choice, and that was enough. Sera and Ashar married in a ceremony of their own design, attended by the dozens of people whose lives they had touched, former tradition-bound people who had found freedom and purpose through their help. There were no prescribed vows, no traditional elements they did not choose to include. Instead, they spoke from their hearts about partnership and choice, about supporting each other's growth, about building a life together based on mutual respect and shared purpose. And when they spoke their commitment, Sera's light blazed so bright that everyone present had to shield their eyes, while Ashar's Solar Lion mark glowed in harmony. Two powers meant to complement each other, two souls meant to walk together. They had 2 children over the years, a daughter and a son. The daughter showed signs of Lumina abilities, while the son bore a faint mark that suggested possible connection to the Solar Lion, though it remained dormant through his youth. But unlike previous generations, Sera and Ashar did not assume their children would follow their paths. They raised them to explore, to try different things, to discover their own talents and interests. The daughter eventually chose to use her Lumina abilities as a scholar, illuminating ancient texts and artifacts, using her light to study rather than to perform. The son became a diplomat, his faint totem connection giving him an intuitive sense for reading people and situations that served him well in negotiations. Both found purpose in their own ways, and both knew they had the unconditional support of parents who valued choice above tradition. As Sera reached her 40th year, 22 years after fleeing the Pridelands, she and Ashar stood together at the original way station, the first they had built, now expanded into a full community center that served not just as shelter, but as school, workshop, and gathering place. It was evening, and Sera was preparing to lead a workshop for young people from the Pridelands who were questioning their assigned roles, offering guidance and perspective drawn from her own experience. Ashar watched her prepare, his golden eyes soft with love and admiration. "You have come so far from the frightened girl I found at that oasis. You have become the person you were always meant to be, and you have helped hundreds of others do the same. Do you ever think about what your life would have been if you had not fled? If you had undergone that ceremony and accepted the traditional path? Sera paused in her preparations, considering. I think about it sometimes. I think about the ceremonies I would have performed, the light shows I would have created, the accolades I might have received, and I feel nothing. No regret, no longing, not even curiosity, really, because that life was never mine. It belonged to the idea of who I should be, not to who I actually am. This life, with all its challenges and uncertainties, this is the only life that feels real. This is the only life I want. Ashar moved to stand beside her, taking her hand. I am grateful every day that you had the courage to run. Not just because it brought you to me, though I am selfishly glad for that, but because the world is better with you in it as yourself, rather than as what others wanted you to be. You shine brighter when you choose to shine than you ever could when forced to glow on command. Sera leaned against him, drawing comfort from his steady strength. And I am grateful that when you found me, you saw a person rather than a mission, that you offered choice rather than judgment, that you walked beside me rather than trying to lead me. You gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. You gave me myself. They stood together in comfortable silence as the sun set outside, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson. In a few minutes, young people would arrive for the workshop, seeking guidance, seeking hope, seeking proof that choosing your own path was possible, even when the whole world seemed to demand conformity. And Sera would shine for them, not because she had to, but because she chose to, because her light was hers to give or withhold as she saw fit, because freedom meant having the power to make that choice every single day. This was her life. This was her purpose. This was her glow. And no one could ever take it away again, because she had claimed it completely, transformed it from obligation into gift, from burden into blessing. She had fled the Pridelands seeking freedom, but what she found was something deeper. The understanding that true freedom is not the absence of responsibility, but the presence of choice. Not running from who we are, but claiming the right to define what that means. The Lion Guardian had found her glow, yes, but more importantly, he had helped her find herself. And together they had built something that would outlast them both, a legacy of choice and courage and the revolutionary idea that people are more than their bloodlines, more than their prescribed roles, more than what tradition demands. They are whatever they choose to become, and that choice is sacred. This is their story. This is their truth. This is their gift to all who follow. The knowledge that it is never too late to flee what confines you, never too wrong to seek what calls to you, never too difficult to build a life that is truly your own. Run if you must. Question what you are told. Choose for yourself. And when you do, you may find that what you were running from was not your destiny, but the cage others built around it. Break that cage. Claim your power. Define your glow, and shine with the fierce brightness of someone who knows that every light they emit is a choice, a gift, a celebration of freedom hard-won and fiercely protected. That is the way forward. That is the path of the light. That is the legacy of Sera, who fled, and Ashar, who found her, who together proved that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a single act of courageous defiance. If this story resonated with you, if you felt Sera's suffocation in a life chosen for her, if you recognize the courage it takes to flee what is expected and claim what is desired, share your thoughts in the comments below. What roles have you rejected? What paths have you chosen against expectation? What lights have you claimed as your own? Your stories inspire others to seek their own freedom, to question their own cages, to run toward their authentic selves rather than remaining trapped in others' visions of who they should be. And if you have not yet subscribed to Solaris Legends, join us now. Become part of this community that celebrates choice over obligation, courage over conformity, authentic light over forced performance. Hit subscribe and activate notifications so you never miss another tale from this vast desert realm where running away is sometimes running towards something better, where guardians help rather than confine, where every glow is a choice and every choice is sacred. Thank you for spending this time with us, for witnessing Sera and Ashar's journey from flight to freedom, from obligation to choice, from what others demanded to what they created together. Until the next adventure, may you have the courage to run from what confines you, the wisdom to recognize those who help rather than hinder, the strength to claim your own light and shine it exactly as you choose. This is Solaris Legends, where tradition is questioned, choice is celebrated, and every person has the right to define their own glow. We will see you in the next story.